So Black Panther in that scene was a big part of that scene going in. Was that to just show how badass he was? You know, he was chasing them on foot and just catching up to them and stuff.
Yeah, well, that was his big intro into the MCU, so it had to be huge. And he couldn't just look like another superhero character coming into the mix who's going to throw a couple punches, take a couple punches, throw a couple punches, take a couple punches, and now it's just like, okay, well, that's kind of boring. We had to show that this guy is going to enter the scene, and he's going to give the Winter Soldier, the world's most badass assassin, all he can handle at the blink of an eye.
So, hi everyone, welcome to the Artist Experience. Our guest today is Tony Liberatore. He's a storyboard artist, animatic artist, writer, and director. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, as far as art goes, I grew up back east. Started drawing at a very young age. I was very interested in animation at a very young age. I was a big fan of date myself here, but early 80s anime cartoons like Thundercats and Transformers and the Mighty Orbots and that type of stuff. And I was totally blown away by that. When I was a little kid, I told my dad, I was like, hey, I want to make an animated TV show. Completely ignorant as to what goes into it. And my dad was like, sure, son. Yeah, sure, you can do it. So he ordered some animation cells for me and a little table, and I started drawing up stuff. And I had no idea it was never going to amount to anything, but it's weird. It was like my first introduction to storyboarding in a way, and it just kind of came naturally because I wanted to tell the story that I had in my head. But I was like, well, how do you lay this down in order to tell the story? So it just kind of came natural. It's like, okay, well, I need to do these little panels here in order to tell the story visually that I'm trying to get across. And that was really kind of like the first time I ever storyboarded without even knowing what it was. But yeah, I mean, that coupled with my love for sci-fi and action movies, not paying attention in school, all that kind of.
Were you the kid that was always drawing in class?
Oh, dude, I got in so much trouble in school not paying attention. I think, honestly, I'll be really honest with you. From about 5th grade on, I had a lot of trouble in school because I just couldn't pay attention. It just did not interest me at all. And they weren't talking about anything that I felt had any connection to me in any type of way. All I wanted to do was draw and daydream and create things in my head and make them come to life somehow, in a version of a story. And it just consumed me. It still consumes me.
Gotcha. So you were always like a really creative person, even at a young age.
Always. Yeah, either whether it was writing or music or drawing, I always had this need to make something, and just get it out there because it was in my head, and whatever that need or that urge is within somebody that's creative, they just have to get it out and share it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I always wanted to pursue a career in art, but I didn't know really what my options were, even at like the college level, or what direction I should go in. Again, I knew I was a big fan of animation and telling stories, but even at the college level, I remember one of my professors telling me, "Listen, you're never going to be able to make money drawing ever or painting unless you're dead. People start buying your work." So that was a big downer, and what my professor said after that was kind of even a bigger downer. And she was like, "Listen, if you really want to draw for a living and show people how to draw, you might want to try and pursue your master's degree in teaching. Come back and teach an illustration class like me."
Okay.
I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. So I was kind of bummed out because I didn't know what my options were, and I didn't go to a traditional film school. So I was in college, so they were kind of. Their art departments weren't geared around any type of film experience. So they were ignorant as to what creative type jobs go into production. So again, I really had nobody giving me any information. It really wasn't. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just about to ask, so what exactly was your major in college then?
I was a fine art major.
Fine art. Okay, so.
And I was resigned to the idea of becoming like a museum curator type of guy that would take people through the museum and talk about the artwork.
Yeah.
That's what I thought I would probably end up doing. But my life changed one day when I watched the movie Gladiator when it came out on DVD.
Okay.
And back then, that particular release came with a special features disc, and I loved that movie. I watched it like a million times. And one day I decided to put in the special features disc to see like you know, if they had any deleted scenes or any other little tidbits of knowledge that I could kind of mine out of this. And I saw one of the tab headings was storyboards, and I clicked on it and I just saw all this beautiful work by this artist. He's a famous storyboard artist. And I was just mesmerized by it. And the funny thing is my first reaction when I looked at it was like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah.
Because I was mostly kind of doing hyper realistic drawings in college, like portrait type stuff, you know.
Okay.
Take weeks and weeks and, you know, make it really 3D and picture looking. But I didn't realize until I tried to draw storyboards that, oh, well, you don't have photo reference anymore. And you have to draw that face. And not only do you have to draw that face, but I want that face at a 3/4 low angle. Oh, and attach it to a body that's hanging off a bridge with a helicopter above it and crocodiles below it. It's like, how do I do all this out of my head? You know?
Yeah.
So it required like a complete retraining as far as drawing goes.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, after I saw that DVD, I was like, oh, I could do this. And then when I started doing it, I realized, oh no, this is gonna be a lot more difficult than I originally thought, for a number of reasons, not just because of the drawing, but because of storyboarding itself as it's a multiple or a multidisciplinary job that we can kind of get into that later. But
Right. Okay. So was this mostly like, were you kind of like self-taught, or you said your college didn't really offer too much in terms of teaching this particular skill?
Well, when you say self-taught, are you talking about the actual drawing or storyboarding? Because it's like two completely different animals.
That's true. I would say storyboarding.
Yeah, storyboarding is something that I picked up on my own after I discovered what it was, kind of piecing together certain books, calling up other storyboard artists, harassing a bunch of people, just however I could get as much knowledge as I could. And to this day, I'm still getting more knowledge, you know, because now I'm in a pipeline with other production people. You know, I have kind of an overview as to, you know, where the boards go and who's making decisions about certain things. And, you know, but yeah.
Gotcha. Can you tell us about like the first storyboard job you ever worked on?
Yeah, the first job I ever had gotten was a commercial for Reebok. And because I didn't start in films, I got in through advertising and commercials. That's actually my original background.
Okay.
But yeah, I was working at this little hardware store. And I closed up the shop and drove down to Santa Monica, and because I got the call from my agent, and I was trying to get in with them, get my foot in the door with them for like 4 years.
Wow.
And when that call came, I was like, all right, well, this is my opportunity. I'm shutting down the hardware store and I'm going to Santa Monica. And I come back at the end of the day and there's like business cards on the door, because I left a sign on the window that said, be back soon. And people are like, what does soon mean? And when are you coming back? Yeah, luckily that job turned into another one, and then another, and then another. And then I just, I never looked back from that point.
Wow. Okay. So that's how you got in. That was the beginning.
That was the beginning, but it took like 4 years to get to that point, because I would email a portfolio to these agents like every 6 months to a year, and they would always shoot me down or turn me down and say, oh, you're getting there, but you know, you need a little more of this or a little more of that. Until one day they were they needed an extra gun, you know, and they were desperate. And I don't know if they were desperate, but they were looking for another artist, and they called me and they said, hey, got an opportunity for you if you want to take it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually didn't know that they did storyboarding for commercials as well. So is storyboarding
for
everything? Okay. And
anytime you want to get a complicated visual narrative or visual idea across, the best way to do it is with pictures, and pictures in a story related form is going to tell you or tell your client everything that you want to get across to them.
Gotcha. So is like storyboarding something they've done since the beginning of time, from when films were being made?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could say it's since the beginning of time. I mean, it's the earliest form of narration, you know, people drawing stuff on walls. It's like, this is how I'm going to communicate the story of what our big hunt looked like today. Okay, here we are hunting over here, and here's the big bison that we saw, you know. It's kind of ingrained in who we are. That's why I'm saying that. But
yeah, gotcha.
That kind of logical next step into the filmmaking process, I don't know. I'm not like a film historian, so I can't be 100% sure, but I know it was around Hitchcock or somebody just before Hitchcock really working the film out in the storyboard phase before they even shot a single frame. So I know it goes way back to that point, and somewhere around in there, or just after, I know Walt Disney really started picking up on the storyboard stuff. And that's why Disney movies were so, now for what they were and what they are in the time period that they came out, just speaking narratively, the stories are constructed so tightly narratively because they were in story development for years and years.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what Pixar does now. And that's why their stories are so solid. They just refine the story process in the storyboarding phase until it's absolutely perfect. And then they'll go out and animate it, or they'll go out and, like Hitchcock would just go out and shoot it. I think he said one time that once he's done storyboarding, his work on the film is done. Just up to the crew to go out and capture the images.
Wow.
So
that's awesome. So you've worked on many different.
If I'm not hitting any of your questions here, let me know too. If I'm not.
No, you're doing great. This is a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you about some Marvel movies, because you've worked on a lot of different Marvel movies, and I mean, they're huge right now. They've been, dominating the box office for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to maybe ask like one question or two for each, just for time's sake.
For sure.
Cool. So starting off with Venom, you worked on the Venom movie, the lobby sequence, right? When he's fighting those SWAT guys.
Yeah, that's one of the sequences I worked on for Venom.
Okay.
That, however, was through that was through Sony, not through Marvel.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Although I do hear that they are considering bringing him into the MCU and combining the universes somehow, but we'll see.
Would that be
awesome? Anyway, it seemed like they were almost teasing a R rating with that one. Like, was there a more brutal version of that scene that we didn't get to see on screen?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I drew in there that didn't make it on the screen, but I don't know if it was necessarily because of violence. It's usually more because of money and time.
Gotcha. Huh.
I remember when I was boarding this stuff, we would just, in the storyboards, nobody was safe. It's like, okay, kill people, do this and that, and then just give us the full R-rated version in the storyboards, and then we'll whittle it down and work through whatever we want. It's funny, not related to this, but I also worked on an early version of the Dark Tower with Ron Howard.
Ron Howard.
And Ron Howard's a pretty nice, kind of understated, low-key type of guy. But when we were doing these scenes, it was the same thing. It's like, give me the R-rated version, give me the most violent version. I want to just see, throw everything at me, and then we'll kind of dial it back from there. So we're not really cognizant about like, oh, is he being too violent or doing this or that? It's like they'll say we might be looking for an R rating for this movie. We're not sure yet because of the success of Deadpool and all that. So
right, Logan.
They'll say, yeah, Logan. They'll say we're working under this premise, so just don't be afraid to go there with the boards.
Okay, so they were kind of considering an R rating back then, but they weren't too sure themselves yet.
Yeah, I mean maybe they knew, but they weren't telling us. They were just
gotcha.
Just giving us very general direction. Don't be afraid to kill grandma on the corner if
wow,
it presents an opportunity. It's like, all right, great.
Awesome. Okay, moving on. Also, I wanted to talk about Captain America: Winter Soldier. You worked on the scene where they're on the ship, right? The Lumerian Star.
Yeah, I did the Lumerian Star scene, and I did a bunch of pickup stuff on that too. I had to come in at the end of the film after we were done shooting for VFX stuff. And I think I touched around the Hydra facility where Cap and Black Widow are when the explosion happens. I did that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. My hands were all over that thing.
So with that scene where they're on the ship, that seemed like the first big action sequence of the movie, right? And I noticed that Cap and Widow both act and move a little differently than previous films. Was this something deliberate by the directors? Did they mention how they wanted to do kind of a new version of Cap and Widow?
I think I wasn't privy to this conversation. It probably would have been a conversation that the Russo brothers had with the studio, with Marvel.
Yeah.
But I know that there was a conscious decision to make things visually different like that. To go from the original first Avenger Cap movie to this one, you see that this one now it's totally grounded in reality in every way, shape, and form. And that's even comes down to Cap's fighting. There's no big crazy, like, you know, I'm not putting down DC, but you would see a DC fight scene stage versus like a Captain America fight scene in the Winter Soldier. Two completely different things. One's a VFX heavy scene, which is fine. The other one is very kinetic, very grounded, it's very gritty and very rough. And that's what the Russo brothers wanted to kind of, that's the vision they kind of had for the movie. Not just that, but they wanted to make it more like a political thriller.
Right.
You know, kind of like from the 70s when they tried to get that kind of. So yeah, that was a conscious decision made on all levels, the visual level, the fighting, the staging, everything.
Gotcha.
And that carries through through all the movies too. So when you're sitting down, like when I worked on Captain Marvel, we did I did the opening. Well, I did a lot, but when we did the opening sequence of the movie, there was no real visual language for Carol Danvers, you know, other than her floating around in the comics with her fist glowing.
Yeah.
You know, so we had to do this whole kind of visual language thing, animation, and you know, they would sit there and they would look at this visual animation and the visual language of that character, and they would say, you know, that looks a little too Black Widow, or that looks a little too Wonder Woman, or this or that. So they try and keep these threads through all the movies about how these people fight, you know, what their attitudes are like in these action scenes, how they would be thinking. You know, when I first worked, when I went in on the Civil War meetings, you know, I sat down and, you know, I was there with a bunch of like comic nerds that were in this meeting. They were just like going off on motivation for Cap and how he wouldn't do this or that. And I'm like, oh my God. So, you know, it's, I'm not saying, oh my God, like, oh my God, you're a nerd, you know this. I know this stuff too, but it's the amount of information. It's like if you're doing a scene that's got Black Widow and Cap and Thor and Iron Man, and your job as a storyboard artist is to bring each one of these characters into the scene without giving one too much, making it look like a team. You have to keep all of these things in your head about what these characters are and how they would approach a fight or this or that.
Gotcha. It's a balancing act.
Constantly. It's a constant creative problem solving.
Oh, wow.
And then when you think you've got it solved, you'll have somebody else look through your boards and they'll start picking out obvious things you missed, which is fine because it's a, you know, a 5-6 minute long sequence with hundreds of panels. You can't possibly think of everything.
Right. That makes sense. So do you, in terms of, I want to get a little bit into the process of these. So do you, working on these, do you talk with the directors and the writers, or like who gives you the general idea of what they want for the sequence, I guess?
Well, it all varies depending on the show, depending on the director. I give talks and stuff a lot of times at film schools, and I tell them that the storyboard artist position is almost like an actor. You get kind of typecast in a way. You can be the horror board guy, you can be the rom-com board guy, you can be the action board guy. I've kind of fallen into this niche where I'm a kind of conceptual heavy lifting guy with like an emphasis on action and sci-fi. So I'll get very general, again, going back to the Captain Marvel, that the opening sequence of the movie where they go to Torfa to spring out that guy, one of the Kree.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic direction I got out of that first meeting was, listen, we like the idea of like a SEAL team, small elite squad of Kree soldiers landing on this planet covertly, and they go on a mission, and then they're like, I don't know, maybe they're like springing out one of their own or something. So you could tell that they had basic like storyline ideas that they wanted to pursue, but they weren't quite sure. That's basically the amount of information I got out of that. So I got to turn around and do this kind of conceptual heavy lifting thing and say, okay, well, what is this sequence? So what does it look like? So, you know, you just go into kind of research land, and, you know, if you're any normal creative person, you're a good observer of life and things like that. So, you know, lots of ideas will start flooding in your head, and you just start thumbnailing out the shots, and then you kind of get it in a coherent fashion from start to finish. I like to board out the entire sequence in kind of keyframes, just get all those big moments that I see in my head happening. Then I'll get all that down and present that at the first meeting. So it'll be like it'll be like a big meeting with all the execs and the producer and the directors there and everything, and do like a tap dance through your sequence and sell the sequence to them.
Right. So at this point, a lot of times is the script not even like finished then?
Oh yeah, I rarely work from a script.
Oh, huh.
Rarely. Now that's again That's me. That's the position that I found myself in life. I don't know. There's other artists that I've worked with on the same show that have had fully fleshed out scripts for them, and it might be like a conversation scene or like a walk and talk scene through a really expensive location, so they want to get the shots right. But the script and the dialogue stuff is already done. It's just that myself personally, I usually find myself in situations where they want to be told what they like, or they have a very, very general direction. I also work on all the Fast and Furious movies, but I do that with a separate crew of people. It's a second unit crew, and they basically shoot all the action and the stunts. And that's my job for them, is solely coming up with ideas for gags. So that's all we do, come up with ideas for gags. And then when I go back to like Marvel or other stuff, I'm back on the main unit. So we're dealing with more story type stuff. So like, again, it varies, depends.
Okay, So, I mean, what is the timeline like for the development of these movies? Like, when do you start working on the storyboards and versus like when is the film actually released?
Well, a typical Marvel movie, I'll be on it for about a year. And then it's usually like another year until it gets released because there's so much post. Well, you have to remember, when I come on, I'm like I'm on before like the payroll people are on.
Wow.
So I'm like up there with the writer and the director, maybe like a concept artist that might be on. We're like the earliest people on. So you have to remember that by the time that I'm done my work, people are still getting hired onto the job, and I may have been on the job for like almost a year already.
Wow.
So they're getting prepped to go shoot. Usually by the time my foot's out the door, they go shoot, they go off the location. I don't know how many weeks they have of shooting. Could be like 10 weeks of shooting or something like that. And then they come back and then they got to do post and editing. And then they have to go reshoot stuff that they didn't get. And then any type of big VFX shots, they have to plan all that stuff out at the very end. They can hire more board artists to come back in at that point. It's like, imagine doing like a Star Trek movie and you shoot all the actors, you get all that stuff down. We got all the stuff on the bridge and we did all this and that. Oh, fuck, we need a big, huge shot of the Enterprise blowing up. What are we going to do? We came up with that idea after we shot everything. All right, well, call the storyboard artist in and he'll draw up a whole scene or go through it, and then we'll shoot the VFX stuff. So yeah, again, it varies. You can come in at any point during the production to help out.
Gotcha. Wow. So you're involved like throughout the whole film, sometimes at the beginning, sometimes later.
Sometimes at the end. I've been called. I was on a Fast and Furious movie and we were in Atlanta and we were trying to get permits to drive a car through a building. And they came up to my office like, dude, you got to do us a favor. You got to draw this car and we want it backing up going through the building, right? But don't make it look like it's endangering people's lives. I'm like, well, how the hell do I do that and make it? So, I'm shitting you not. I'm drawing people like on the far side of the street walking like with baby strollers waving. It's a nice sunny day and people are just walking around. And here's this car going through a building back. And they ended up actually getting the permit from it. So, yeah, we can be used for anything. Again, like I said, it's that the earliest form of communication. It's like, we need to sell this to this person. What's the best way to do it? Let's show them.
Gotcha. How many storyboards are there usually for a movie?
Well, it depends. There's, I think the biggest, I mean, it can go from a couple hundred frames to thousands of frames. I had a scene where I worked on was just 4 frames. It was one shot, really quick. I think the biggest scene I've ever, it's funny, the 2 biggest scenes I've ever worked on, and frame count wise, was the Lagos scene in Civil War.
Oh yeah.
The vault heist in Fast 5.
That was one of my favorite scenes. Yeah.
That scene is insane because everything you're seeing is real. It's all practical. The only CG that is in that scene are the favelas in the background, because Justin Lin was looking at the storyboards and he's like, yeah, you need to tell the story of the environment because we're in Puerto Rico and we want people to think that we're in Rio de Janeiro. So remember that. So it was putting the favelas on the hillsides in the background and erasing the cables. We had a couple CG cables from the vaults attached to the car just to help stabilize it. So we had to erase those out. But that's like the only CG in that scene. It's all practical. That's the cool thing about those Fast and Furious movies. Everything you're seeing, for the most part, is real.
Wow, I did not know that. Did not know that.
Yeah, we tore up Puerto Rico for like 10 weeks. Whatever we wanted. They're like, oh, you want to take out the bank? Go ahead. Oh, bus stop? Sure, go ahead.
Wow.
Now, you go up to the next movie, which was Fast 6, and I boarded a tank sequence. And that tank was originally supposed to come out of Piccadilly Circus, go through the fountain, and then go down Regent Street, crushing double-decker buses and killing people. And the London Film Commission saw it, and they're like, no, you can't do that here. So we had to reboard, retool, and pack up. And I think we went to the Canary Islands to shoot the tank on the bridge instead, which ended up being a great scene. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that scene where they're dragging in Fast Five, where they're dragging the safe through the streets, that was practical effects.
All practical, yeah.
Wow, wow, huh?
Now, remember when I say doesn't mean there's not trickery going on there. It's practical. Like some of the really smooth turns around the corner, that's a driver in the vault who has his own. The vault is actually a car. So we need those really cool, but it's 3 stunt drivers driving in tandem. It's a lot of rehearsal stuff. It's a lot of time it takes to get this stuff down. It's no different than choreographing dance or a fight scene or something like that. But this time you're doing it with a lot more hardware.
Gotcha. Do the actors ever actually like drive the cars during like the chase scenes and stuff, or is it like?
No, they do. When we need main unit shots, which are shots of the actor. There's a couple different ways they can do it. Nowadays, they like to get a more realistic look. They have these rigs that are, I don't know how they do it. They attach them to the top of the car. So if Dom is driving his Charger, he's in there, delivering his lines and spinning the wheel, and you're seeing the background like spin around. And it looks really real. It doesn't look green screen, and it's because it's not. Because on top of that car is another driver. And he's driving on top of it. If you see the thing, it looks absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. But he's actually driving the car and he's doing donuts. And the actor's just sitting in the car pretending that he's doing the donuts and he's delivering the line because the camera's just locked off on him in the car and you can't see the stunt driver on the roof. It's pretty funny.
See, like most people would never know that just watching the movies. Like it looks so well done.
Yeah, like was it I think 7 when they pushed the cars out of the airplanes? That's all real. But when you cut into the actor now, the actor is on a gimbal, which is this giant contraption that the car is actually locked on to, and that gimbal can spin the car around like 360 or ass over end or side to side, however they want to configure it. And then they put the camera on the car there, so the actor's safe in the gimbal and they're in the car. And then when they cut the Dom in the air, pull your parachutes or whatever, it looks like he's actually flying around in the air.
Wow. So that scene, they actually pushed cars out of a real airplane?
Yeah, there's a great documentary that my boss Spiro did on YouTube. You can find it. It's Spiro and Jack Gill, Jack is the stunt coordinator. Spiro's the director. I'm the artist. And we work with the Red Bull diving team, skydiving. So you'll see them in the video. They jump out of the plane with the cars and they just film the cars as they're in the air. And Spiro is in a helicopter off to the side. He's looking at the boards, trying to tell these cameramen, get the shot, get it like that, get around the car over here. But the cars, they move the way they want to in the air. They come at you, they move away from you. It's pretty hairy. Yeah, watch that video. It's really entertaining. It's crazy.
Okay, I'll check it out. That's awesome. I mean, that makes me like these movies even more because nowadays it just feels like there's so much CGI. So much unnecessary CGI in movies, and to hear that they actually use practical effects, that's really a breath of fresh air.
That's the one. You're not going to a Fast and Furious movie for the Oscar level acting.
Yeah.
We're going to these movies because they're fun. And Fast and Furious movies are fun. And Justin, who's helmed a lot of the movies, Justin Lin, he really. Man, this guy did something that is just not heard of. I think Tokyo Drift was going to be like direct to DVD or something like that, and it tested so high. Yeah. And Sung Kang tested so high as an actor. I think he was one of the highest, had one of the biggest positivity ratings for an actor in Universal history. At least that's what I was told during his acting test.
Wow.
So the movie went for a theatrical release and ended up doing like $400 million. And then came 4, which was a big success, and then 5 was just a mammoth success. I'd like to say, I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but that was Spiro and I's first job together on Fast. But
nice. I mean, I think 5 was the one that like really changed the whole genre.
It revitalized it for sure. It turned it into a heist genre, not a bunch of high school kids stealing car radios anymore. It totally upped the ante, and now we're in total. We're in total heist land now.
I mean,
everything. That's the one thing. One thing you can really appreciate about all those Fast movies, well, at least from 3 on, is that the practical action and everything that you're seeing there is real. The light on the surfaces, the physics, all of it is real. I mean, there might be some small CG enhancement, like making an explosion bigger or adding some extra debris or something like that. But you're
Uh-huh.
never going to see like a floaty. I mean, even in Furious 7, when the Lycan jumped from the one building to the other and then to the third building,
Yeah.
that that was real. It
Really?
just wasn't at that. Well, just wasn't at that spot. But we
Okay.
built part of that building. We built it
Uh,
like 7 stories high, and we built
wow.
another building right next to it. And we jumped the car from one building to the other, and it hit the floor. Then they set it up for the third building that we built. That wasn't a whole building; it was just the exterior and enough for the car to jump and land on the other building. But it's all practical.
Okay. So was there a real person in the car or no?
I don't think there was a real person in the car. That was a little too dangerous.
Yeah.
There wasn't a real person in that scene, and then when we were in Iceland doing the submarine scene, there wasn't a real person in the Charger when it launched over the conning tower of the sub. But
Okay.
most of the time, dude, they had a real stunt guy in there.
Wow.
We had
Wow.
cars like going into the water through the ice. We had to have divers like pulling people out. It was pretty hairy.
Jeez. Never would have thought of that. I thought it was all CGI.
No, you know, like I said, you'll get enhancements here and there. They'll do a couple shots. I know F. Gary Gray's version, I think it was Furious 8. There was a zombie car sequence in New York City.
Yeah.
All the cars that were coming out of the buildings and the parking structures, that was all practical. I boarded all that stuff. They just had people pushing cars out of the buildings and filming them.
So they
Now, there's
trashed
one
all these
amazing,
cars.
yeah, there's one amazing shot in that sequence where it's like a long lens shot and we're on an intersection and you just see like 1,000 cars come around the corner and it's really messy. They start slamming into each other. It's a beautiful sequence, and I don't know if Spiro's ever going to hear this, but I have to say that may be the best shot in the movie, and it's not practical. So I don't want to sound like I'm talking down the effect shots because it was just a phenomenal shot.
One thing I do want to touch on, so you worked on the scene where the sub is chasing them through the ice, right?
Yes.
I do want to ask though, a lot of people are saying nowadays, they feel that the franchise has, changed a little too much from the initial just street racing movies, right? So are there ever any times where they say like, is this a little too over the top where, you got a submarine chasing them through the ice? Did they ever say like, maybe we should,
I hear that at like the beginning of every Fast movie, and then it's like, well, when I start adding my stuff to that, it just gets even more over the top. So I kind of digest it. If it's like a ridiculous idea, I'm like, man, that's really over the top. But then, my job's to run with it. So I
right.
More over the top. Or I'll make an effort to ground it in reality and make things happen as organically as possible within the sequence. So yeah, some things you just can't do that with. You try your best, and you make it look like you tried your best, and when you bring it into present and pitch it, usually, you'll hear it in the room. Maybe that idea is not working so good.
Gotcha.
But it's hard in those instances too, because people aren't telling you things. It's like, well, did you not like it because of the way I drew it? Did you not like my shot selections, or did you not like it because it was a dumb idea on your part? You don't get those answers. But after so many years of being in these meetings and doing this, you can kind of anticipate those types of comments even when you're drawing it. You're gonna be like, oh, this is not going to go well, but I just got to get it done. And when you're pitching it, you can hear the mumbling. You'll be like, yeah, I know. I've already anticipated this part not going well, so we're on to the next thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I like those scenes. I mean, I feel like the whole point of those movies is to see over the top, crazy stuff that would never happen in real life. So.
Right, but there has to be some sort of, like, the way it's shot grounds it in reality just by default because you're shooting it. It's real. All the ancillary things that are around all the action is grounded in reality in those movies. Just think about how Justin Lin wants to play those characters. He has a huge theme of family that runs through all those movies that helps ground the characters in reality. So it really helps when it's a really solid, rooted story narrative. You believe the characters. You can start throwing those kind of like over the top shit into the mix if you want, because you're dealing with a very grounded, very strong crew of people and storyline. It's worked on everyone so far. Believe me, every time they come up with an idea, oh, we're going on the ice with a submarine. Oh, that's stupid. Oh, we're going to throw the cars out of an airplane. Oh my God, this is ridiculous. So it just depends. You can do that stuff, and you can put it into this franchise because it is so grounded in reality in a way.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you worked a lot with Justin Lin, right? I mean,
How'd you end up over here
he's
anyway?
one of my favorite directors. I think he really changed the
You
game
notice
in a lot
all
of
the
ways.
Westerners,
And you mentioned
the cowboys make a run for
Sue
the
Kang, the
border.
guy.
Justin is
Go
yeah,
ahead.
Justin is
That's my Mexican
my
friend.
everything. He is the reason I have a career. I
Wow.
have a funny story about
Why'd you let me
Justin. I was
rescue your
hired to
car?
do
You
um,
knew I was gonna wreck it.
well, let me put it this way. I got booked on a job for
Why not?
Universal, and I
Hmm.
show up at the job,
Cause it's a
and they
lot of
said,
money.
"Listen, you're going to be working on the special features DVD for Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, and we have an idea that we want to be able to customize a car and drive it through to select the scenes." It was a really,
Huh.
lame idea. So again, that wasn't a traditional storyboarding job, but I have to draw out all that stuff in order to sell the idea. So I'm not drawing in a traditional storyboard format. I'm drawing in um, a menu, like a DVD menu template.
Right.
So whatever. I did the job, got paid. I get booked 2 days later. I'm meeting this guy Justin at this place called Astro Burger in Silver Lake. So I go, I meet Justin, super nice guy. He starts telling me about the job that we're going to be doing, and it's for Sea-Doo wave runner things. Those things you ride around the water.
Hmm.
So he was doing a web commercial for Sea-Doo, and it was like 115 frames. And at the end of the job, it was like 115 frames, and I busted all this out for him in like a day. And the reason I did that is because when we first met, after ordering me lunch, Justin's like the sweetest guy. He orders me lunch, and he asked me how I'm doing, asked me what I'm working on. And I said, well, the last job I had was I was just over at Universal Studios doing a job for like a special features disc for those. And then I stopped and I go, you ever see those fucking stupid ass Fast and Furious movies? And he's looking
Yeah.
at me. He's like, yeah. I was like, well, I was just over at Universal doing like some DVD menu and things. So stupid. He's like, wow, I was just over there the other day too. I was like, really? What were you doing? He was like, director commentary on the special features. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I was like, really? So he starts laughing. And then just watching me backpedal out of the situation was frightening. Like, oh no, dude, I really love those movies, and you got
I
me
didn't
wrong.
either.
So anyway, I'm like, all right, so I have to kick ass for this guy. So like that night, I busted out like 115 frames for the Sea-Doo commercial and got it over to him the next day. And I really worked hard to, kind of, to get a good relationship with Justin to make a good impression upon him. So
Mhm.
he called me. I think I did another commercial for him after that, but I wasn't in the union yet. So he said that he would bring me on film. He's like, just got to get you in the union.
Wow.
And he tried to get me on, and they weren't able to do it. He bent over backwards for me, really trying to get me on. But being that I was in, I couldn't do it. So I started taking as many union commercials as I could get, and so I could get my hours together.
Right. Join the
And
union.
eventually I was eligible. And the second I was eligible, I reached out to Justin. He's like, wow, that's great timing because I'm starting to staff up for Fast 5, if you're interested. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm interested. I flew down to Atlanta, and then we all flew out to Puerto Rico and set up shop there. And that's where I met Spiro. And we've kind of all been a team ever since.
Wow, that's awesome, man. It's
yeah, but
I always...
everything to Justin. Justin is just, I mean, it's so funny. The last time I wrapped Fast 9 a few months back, and I hadn't talked to Justin in a few years, and he had gotten on the phone because he wanted to give me a note real quick.
Mhm.
I was like, dude, while I have you, and he's like, yeah, go ahead, man. I was like, I just want to tell you, how grateful I am, and I just want you to know and understand what kind of impact you've had on my life.
Wow.
If it wasn't for you, I would not be where I am today.
Mhm.
I think he was really moved by it, and because that's the kind of guy that he is. He's very genuine, and I just felt this overwhelming need to convey to him the importance of what he had did for me. And yeah, and I want nothing but the best for that guy forever. I mean, he is the greatest. And whatever you think of him, however you hold him in your head, it's real. He's that good, he's that awesome.
That's awesome, man. I've always watched the Fast and Furious movies, and they always have a big emphasis on family. So it's great to hear that he treats everyone very well.
Yes, he does.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm a huge fan of his. These movies really changed the game, and even just representation-wise, this is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but the character of Han is a personal favorite of mine. I'm Asian, and just to see representation of cool Asian guy that wasn't a stereotype was really groundbreaking at the time, and really appreciated it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it shows you, and like I said, I wasn't bullshitting. You can look this up. He tested higher in favorability ratings than any other actor in Universal Studios history. Now, this is what I was told by a couple different people high up in production, so I have no reason not to believe it. But that's what I was told. And he personifies coolness.
Yeah.
He is everything you've seen every white cool action hero be over the last 50 years. Yeah. He personifies it, and Justin saw that, and he knows, and there needs to be characters like that for everybody out there. Absolutely. Because everybody wants to see the best version of themselves up there. You know, it's inspiring. It's like, yeah, that person's like me, and they can kick ass just like everybody else can. They can have superpowers, and yeah, it's like, you know, you'll never think of that particular actor in any other stereotypical way. You're going to think him as a badass street driving guy, you know, and that's how you're going to see him. Because that's what he is. He's a badass.
I love.
Justin was right for.
Yeah, I love the scene, the final scene in Fast 5 when he's driving off in the nice car. Yeah, he's got Giselle in his lap, and you know, they're making out, and you know that's
wearing their seatbelts.
Yeah, very inspiring. Very inspiring.
That, however, was not practically shot because there were no.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I'd assume that got some traffic laws and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably so.
Hey guys. Surprise.
Nice clubhouse.
But yeah, that's awesome to hear, man. It's always great to hear that the actors or the directors treat their people nicely. You know, so.
Yeah, for the most case, I mean, I've never really had a nightmare experience. I mean, knock on wood, it could happen, but
yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people. Usually, you know, if you know what you're doing and you're a professional, everybody usually treats you as a professional. You know, I'm not a big one I don't really like to open my mouth a whole lot unless it's warranted, unless I have a question that I need to ask or some clarity that's needed. I just get my work done and, you know, make sure it's in on time and make sure it's the best work that I can possibly make it. And that does all the speaking for you, you know.
Gotcha,
you don't need to really go beyond that. So you can work with the most abrasive people, and if your work is your work and it's good, that's all you really need. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about how the directors and they're called grown-ups on the production, how they treat the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not a lot of people know this about me, but I actually do like a little bit of acting myself on the side. You know, I've mostly just been doing like just like background work, you know, for like commercials and stuff. But yeah, it's always nice when the directors and the people shooting the scene treat you nicely. You know, it's just they don't have to, but it's always nice.
No, they don't have to, but I mean, it's mutual respect. You're a human being. I don't care if you're a director. It's like, you know, I've seen, like, I have people that work for me when I go into a job. I have like an army of PAs and art department people on the set. I treat those people with the utmost respect because they're doing the shit grunt work that nobody wants to do. They're trying to get their foot in the door. They're putting up with tons of crap from everybody, and they're on it. And they are the lifeblood of a production. And anything you need, your PA or whoever's working with you can get you. It's like they're, you know, what do you want in the fridge, Tony? Can you get me Reese's peanut butter cups, ice cream sandwiches? Sure. Really? Okay, great. You know, it's like they'll go to that extreme, you know, and it's just basic respect. And you should always extend a hand of fucking friendship to people like this because they're under the gun. You don't know what kind of shit they're facing. And that type of stuff just comes back around. All the PAs know that you're cool.
Yeah.
When you get in your office in the morning, oh boy, it's gonna be nice and clean and the trash is empty. This, you know, it's just it's a cyclical thing because it's like its own little community while it's happening in the production. You know, and everybody has to get along with everybody and learn how to, you know, work in a fashion that's, you know, where everybody will get along. And the director is at the top of all that, so they kind of have to set the tone for stuff.
It's nice. It's nice.
It doesn't do them any favors to be, you know, assholes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always try to just treat everyone the way I would like to be treated, and when I do that, I find that, you know, usually, typically, not everyone, but most people will treat you the same way with the same respect. So it's good.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
But yeah, if Justin ever needs an extra Asian guy in his movies, hit me up.
I'll let him know next if I ever get the opportunity to talk to him again.
One thing I did want to ask was most of the action sequences in the Fast and Furious movies are like car chases and stuff, right? So is that easier or harder than action sequences with like humans?
It's I don't know. It can be. It depends on what's needed for the particular scene. For me personally, it's harder, I guess, for the car stuff because of the crew that I work with for Fast and Furious. The cinematographer that shoots that stuff, he likes to have boards that are camera accurate, let's say. So you can get the board, shoot the board exactly how it's drawn. But that's not the case for storyboards. You know, you can get it's meant to be at the end of the day, you know, a guide. You know,
Right.
it doesn't have to accurately represent a 35 millimeter lens or a 10 millimeter lens, or you know, it has to convey that type of information. So when I work with the second unit crew for Fast, that cinematographer likes stuff that's as accurate as possible. So since it's cars, I can kind of move into 3D land a little bit and work with 3D assets, so I can space them properly, and I can tell the guy, look, these are two cars in 3D space. They're set up 10 feet apart. The camera's back here. We're on this lens, so you can get this shot. Don't tell me you can't. So I don't get myself in those types of situations anymore. I'll, you know, the cars and stuff, but I'll hand draw in the backgrounds, hand draw in the actors, and this and that. And the other stuff is mostly animatics these days, so it's a lot more animating. So yeah, both have their challenges.
So you work with both usually?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Doing both right now.
Cool. So I want to kind of go back to the Marvel stuff real quick. You mentioned the Lagos scene earlier, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what was the goal of that Lagos scene? Was that to kind of show them working well as a team, and then show something go wrong, you know, go catastrophic? Was that like the point of the scene?
Yeah, we had to find a way to show how dangerous the Scarlet Witch was.
Okay.
And you know what led to her confinement by Tony Stark at the Avenger compound. So we had to create a moment for that also played into, you know, we needed this big moment to get the Covio Accords angle in there, and you know the idea of registration and all that. So it had to be something big and huge. So that's what that whole scene set up. Gotcha. And it also served, you know, to hit a couple other story points. You know, keep us involved with Bucky, because you know the original idea was that I don't know, maybe it's still part of the idea. I'm not sure, but they were supposed to be down there to get information on Bucky via Crossbones, because Crossbones needed information about Bucky. But I don't know if that ended up staying.
I think they cut that. Another scene I wanted to mention from this movie was the Berlin chase scene where Black Panther and they are chasing Bucky. And so that was one of the most intense and well-made actions I've ever watched.
Okay, now let me ask you, what scene did you prefer? Did you prefer that scene, or did you prefer the airport fight scene?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that's tough. I think I preferred that scene, to be honest, because it just felt a lot more practical and grounded. The airport scene was a big, you know, a lot of characters, a lot of powers, whereas this one felt, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's like, felt very grounded. It felt like it could happen, you know?
Right. Okay. So there you're getting like firsthand what I've been explaining here all along. And that's that the airport scene is an awesome scene. It's epic. It's iconic. It's a great scene. I love it. But it's not practical. The Bucky Panther Cap chase in Berlin, the crew that did that, Spiro and Fast and Furious guys. And all that real. And that's why that scene looks so awesome. And if I can direct you to anything, there is a shot in there that when Bucky throws up the explosive, Cap cranks the wheel of the SUV and it starts flipping over. When he comes out of the SUV and he's running, pause that frame, because in that frame you're going to see the car tumbling with the explosion. Cap is like 10 feet out in front of it running. 20 feet out in front of that, Bucky and Panther are tumbling. Another 10 feet in front of that, the bike is sliding. And it's all practical and it's all caught in camera. And if you look at that shot, just look at it and you realize, well, they would never be able to do that VFX wise because the composition of the shot, it's not the greatest composition. So they would try and overcompensate for that, like something like a DC thing would try and do. Like, oh, well, let's Dutch the angle a little more, do this, or they would try and enhance it in some way that didn't need to be done. Now you watch that scene now and just watch that shot and how it plays out, and you'll get how beautiful practical action is versus VFX stuff. Again, I love VFX, shots, but within a kinetic energy scene like that, practical is definitely the way to get your point across.
There's definitely a difference that I can notice, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I hear two things mostly about Civil War. It's either the airport scene or that scene. And I would assume so. Towards the rate.
Okay. Another question I wanted to ask was about so Black Panther in that scene was a big part of that scene going in. Was that to just show how badass he was? He was chasing them on foot and just catching up to them and stuff.
Yeah, well, that was his big intro into the MCU, so it had to be huge. And he couldn't just look like another superhero character coming into the mix who's going to throw a couple punches, take a couple punches, throw a couple punches, take a couple punches, and now it's just like, okay, well, that's kind of boring. We had to show that this guy is going to enter the scene, and he's going to give the Winter Soldier, the world's most badass assassin, all he can handle at the blink of an eye. And there's not a point in that entire chase where Bucky is not on his fucking heels.
Yeah.
Panther is on him from the moment you see his shadow on that roof. He tackles Bucky, and he is taking it to Bucky. And Bucky is doing everything he can just to get away from this guy. And then Cap is kind of out of the mix for a bit. He's just chasing because he was in the other building the whole time. But yeah, we had to use that moment to really tell the audience, this character is badass. This character is going to be becoming his own franchise. He's going to be a integral part in the Avengers. So it had to be a huge moment for him to step onto the MCU stage, and they nailed it.
Yeah, for sure they did. Speaking of Black Panther, that's another thing I wanted to ask about the Black Panther movie. You talk about the Black Panther movie. I saw on your Instagram, you wrote that it was one of the highlights of your career. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Well, as far as when I was brought into that job, when I met, I had a relationship with Nate Moore. He's one of he's part of the Marvel Parliament, basically. He's one of the producers over there. He brought me in to meet Ryan Coogler for Panther.
Okay.
And, just kind of like Justin, man, when I sat down with Ryan and started talking to him, I just knew that that it was going to be a good job because of the way that he was giving me the direction and the areas that he wanted me to go in. And I knew before even getting on the job how important this job was going to be culturally.
Right.
And I wanted to be a part of that. It was like, a guy that I was working with, we kind of split off. His name's Darren Denlinger. If you want to look him up, he's an amazing storyboard artist. He does all the Marvel movies. I think the Russos picked him. They took him to go on to the Avengers stuff. And then I went off with Nate to go do Black Panther, which I think was a better choice in the end. Yeah, I mean, it was after the job was done and looking at the body of work that I had presented and given to them, because it had stretched over so many different things. It was like keyframes, it was VFX stuff, it was animation, it was full on After Effects stuff. And it was proud in the sense that I had done so much. The work was so varied that I was able to give them so many different options on so many different things. It was really satisfying. I had a lot of creative leeway in a lot of things. And, Ryan would pull me back from the edge on a lot of stuff, but he was very, very, very collaborative, and he never made you feel nervous or anything like that. I mean, artists by nature are insecure people, and when you have to go in and pitch, the execs at Marvel with the director, and it's fucking nerve-wracking. And he did a lot. He still does a lot to just cuts right through that tension. I was talking to him the other day. I'm like, "Hey, boss." And he's like, "I don't know who you think you're talking to." I was like, "I'm talking to you, man." He's like, No. It was almost like the point of the movie where he's like, no, we don't do that here, when he's bowing to T'Challa. You know, he's just so down to earth and relatable, and it helps with the creative process because you're not all wound up with the, oh, what's he going to be like? Is he going to be a jerk? Am I, you know, just none of that is there. So you can get right to it, you know, get right to the creativity and get working, you know.
That's awesome, man. That's, again, great to hear how he treats his people, you know.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, those definitely make for the more satisfying jobs because they give you the leeway that you crave in order to, you know, really develop a good sequence. And it's really good to have somebody like that in your corner, you know.
That's cool. So like when you're not as nervous, you can kind of be a little more creative and not really worry about going too far or anything like that.
Yeah, for me anyway. I mean, there's a lot of other artists that I do meetings with that are super confident, and you know, they sound confident in meetings. They can sell you a bunch of shit, and you know, it's verbally sometimes without even drawing anything.
Right.
I'm not really like that, and if I know that people in the room are kind of dickish or whatever, it doesn't make me want to open up in a way where I can sell this scene to you in the most effective way possible. Like if I know, like for Ryan, I'll be doing, you know, I'll be doing sound effects and music and shit when I'm trying to sell this thing to him because he's into it. He's, you know, we're working together. It's like a collaboration, you know, we're feeding off each other.
Right.
But, you know, if there's people in there that, you know, they don't get it or they're really, you know, I don't know what the scenario would be, but if they're just unpleasant and it's not the best environment to work in, you don't want to go that extra mile. You know, you just want to get the sequence over to them. You know, here's my work. This is what I did. What do you think?
Gotcha.
You're just you're not creating that extra energy that can just make it that much better, you know? And those kind of jobs just kind of fall by the wayside in the rearview mirror. You don't really remember them because they're not really that creatively satisfying, you know?
Totally get that. Can you talk about, so you worked on the final scene, right? Where they're fighting, T'Challa and Killmonger are fighting.
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah,
I'm just kind of curious. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious about that scene because they're wearing two very similar looking suits, right? They're both wearing Black Panther suits. One has the silver necklace and one has the gold necklace. So I'm curious, was there like an emphasis on a way to like kind of distinguish them, like based on how they moved or anything like that, to kind of make sure the audience knows like who's who?
Yeah, there was I don't know about so much about the fight moves, the visual language part of it. I didn't get into a lot of that stuff. I was just focusing on them, you know, doing basic standard fighting. It was more about their interaction with the mine cars that were flying by and all that shit that was going on. They had a now this is going to contradict what I was saying about Captain Marvel earlier, but in this instance, we didn't have to do a visual language thing. They brought in some stunt guys to do fight biz.
Gotcha.
So they'll sort of establish the language in the fighting. But for that particular scene, I think the fighting was all CG again. So I don't know if any sort of like fighting or personality narrative came through in the fight scene, but they needed a way to differentiate the two even more. So the Killmonger costume, I think, was just like a prototype that was just kind of hanging around that he took.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think that he was holding two blades also helped differentiate the two of them. So he fought through that movie with those two different kinds of blades. So he kept those until the end.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was just a way to kind of differentiate the two. You don't know who's going to be fighting who. And then also the mine track, when the levitation magnets turned on, it would fuck up their suits. So I think you could see their faces. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah. Yeah,
I remember. I was kind of surprised they chose to go with a CGI suit. I thought his suit looked really nice in Civil War, but then they did.
I thought that nothing. Again, to this day, as much as I love Ryan, nothing. I think the way Black Panther was presented in Civil War in that chase scene, he looked the coolest.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it was a practical actor in a practical suit doing practical fighting, and it's just looks the best.
I agree. I mean, I hope they can go back to that one day. So your IMDb page lists you as working on Black Panther 2. So does that mean production is already underway, or are you allowed to talk about this, or?
I can kind of neither confirm nor deny, but.
Gotcha.
That sounds likely.
All right. I won't go too deep into that then. So it also lists you as working on Falcon and Winter Soldier and the Eternals movie. So Is there anything you can tell us about those? I think, so is your part done for those then, or?
That I don't know. I can't
Okay.
really say. I mean, I can just tell you about the experience of working on both the jobs. Like working with Chloe Zhao on Eternals was an amazing experience.
Hmm.
Her whole approach to filmmaking is like completely different than anybody else that I've worked for.
Wow.
Um, and I got to work with a couple other good people on Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Carrie Scogland, I think, was the director of those. She's another great director, and yeah, I mean, I'll be able to elaborate and show some samples maybe after the stuff comes out, but I really can't talk.
Gotcha. No, I understand. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to those. I know everything's like been delayed now. I do wish the Disney Plus shows would come on Disney Plus already. So
I was so hoping that Black Widow would be a digital release. I'm dying to see it. Looks so.
Yeah, very excited for that one.
Did you ever hear what the end numbers were for Mulan? Was it like was the digital release as big of a success as they wanted to be? I never really paid attention to it.
I didn't hear too much. I think from what I remember, it about broke even from what I heard. I know it wasn't a big success. That's what I heard. I don't think it was a bomb either, but I think it was just kind of average based on what I heard. Have to go back.
Well, that'll probably keep Wonder Woman and Black Widow off the digital release platform for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I would prefer to see I like to see movies like that in theaters. So yeah. I hope to see it in theaters. But if they have to do digital release, then they have no choice than to do that. But
yeah, I mean, I would much prefer to see a movie in the theater than at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. While we're all trapped at home, they can show us, give us something.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how long these delays are going to be? So I know everything got delayed, right? Like the new Fast and Furious got delayed as well, right?
Yeah, everything got delayed. When I jumped on Falcon and Winter Soldier, I started working on the scene, and they couldn't even. Well, the scene that we were shooting was in Prague, and the director had like a couple pictures that she took. She just happened to take them while she was standing there. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to take a couple pictures." Mm-hmm. That's all the pictures I had to work with because they couldn't get anybody over there into the facility because of COVID. So the director's like, "Look, dude, I took this with my cell phone. This kind of gives you an idea what the room looks like. There's a staircase over here, and we want to do this and that." So I'm trying to extrapolate as much, geographic information as I can out of these photos of what the floor plan looks like in this place. But yeah, it's totally it shut everything down. The writing and the storyboarding stuff, all this stuff can continue on because it's just drawing at home and Zoom meetings and stuff. But physical production, yeah, some of it's going on right now in LA. They're taking precautions, but as far as the Marvel stuff goes, I don't know.
So typically, are you typically at the actual location, or do you typically work from home then, or is this like a special case?
Depends on the job. Marvel movies, I usually work from my home studio. I don't have to leave or go, which is awesome. The Fast and Furious stuff, I usually have to travel with that crew because we go to all these exotic locations. And again, it's practical. So we want to shoot it there.
Gotcha.
So we board it there. Again, practical starts with practical. It's like we have to be in the location and bring everybody there, and everything will grow out of that. That way, if I'm there, I can start taking pictures of the location on a scout. And so I'll be there for, I don't know, Fast and Furious movies, they can go anywhere from like 10 weeks to 4 months.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I lived in London for like 4 months working on 6. I lived in Iceland for 3 months working on 8. Lived in Puerto Rico, lived in Hawaii, Vancouver, all over the place, Cuba.
I mean, I think that's pretty cool. You get to kind of travel and see the world.
Yeah, it's really cool. As long as you like working out of a hotel room, and it gets old after a while. Like Iceland, Iceland was like, it's like I'm out at like Ice Station Zebra out in the middle of nowhere, like in the thing, and it's like, you get a little stir crazy out there, and it's like you're out there for months and months and months, and there's nothing around but snow, and it's just this is nuts. Yeah, but yeah, I'm very fortunate to be able to travel with these guys. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. I just had a few more questions I wanted to ask. So how many versions of a scene do you usually do then? Like, let's say they have a scene that they talk to you about, and so you storyboard it, and how many like back and forths are there usually? Like, do they say like, we want it kind of this way or that way? And how many back and forth?
Well, every time I draw up a scene, I bring it in as is. And so it may not be completely finished. So whatever state it's in, that's my version 1. And I'll get notes on whatever I have done, and I'll have to address those notes and finish the sequence. And when I have that, that'll be my version 2. And then they'll make no more notes, and then there'll be a version 3. So I can tell you with a fair degree of confidence, there's usually no less than 5 versions of a sequence.
Oh, wow. Huh.
But that, again, that doesn't mean I'm redoing the entire sequence from start to finish for each version. You know, there could be some stuff they've taken out. There could be a new scene that we've added, just stuff that we've reversed or put in different order, but it's exactly the same. So each one of those counts as a version.
Gotcha.
But on a major set piece sequence, I mean, it can take anywhere from, you know, like 4, 5, 6 months.
Wow. How much of the stuff ends up on the cutting room floor? Like, I assume a lot of stuff you storyboard, but then they decide to cut out and not even like film in the first place. So I'm curious about like how many ideas are, you know, storyboarded, but then never actually filmed or anything.
Well, there are lots of there's different quote unquote ideas that come from storyboard artists. There are ideas for gags and there are ideas for camera angles. So sometimes when you go to watch the movie, you sit down and you're watching the sequence that you worked on, you won't see all the shots in there, right? Because again, you storyboarded out the big budget Cadillac version of this scene. It never stays that way because they don't have the time, they don't have the money. They try and get whatever they can. So usually you see like a truncated version of what you drew. And the reason I made a differentiation between shots and ideas is sometimes you won't see any of your shots in there at all, and you'll see your ideas. And it's like, oh, okay, so they like my idea, but they shot it a different way. It's like, okay. And again, you don't know why they did that. It could be just on the day of shooting, the location prevented something from happening. Maybe there's a busted water pipe or something, or a car accident. It's like, oh, well, shit, we can't shoot the way we wanted to. So, and the sun is not in the right direction, so we have to go over here now and do this and that. So, yeah, a lot of stuff ends up on the cutting room floor, if you will. But when you go to see the movie, you can usually see, I mean, you had so much influence as a board artist on these scenes. Your hands have been everywhere. And you can usually find little tidbits of stuff that are popping out. Oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, that's my idea. Oh yeah, I did that. So it's more like that. It's never like I'm sitting down watching this. Except for Captain Marvel, the training sequence. I laid that whole thing out and they shot a lot of it as boarded, which was really, that was a pretty satisfying experience to watch that. But yeah, it never comes through like perfectly the way you boarded it. It's most of it.
Gotcha.
Cut out, yeah.
Cool. I have 2 more questions left. First one is, what is your favorite scene that you've ever worked on?
That one, there's a couple of them from Captain Marvel because I was just allowed to have so much input. The beginning scene, the Torfa scene was really good. The train sequence was really good. The Pegasus hangar sequence where they fly out in the prototype Quinjet, that was a lot of fun. And then the Black Panther title sequence of the first one, the sand technology.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I came up with a lot of that stuff. We were talking about, Ryan showed me a video of this guy who had this, I don't know, looked like a little metal plate with some dials, and he poured sand on the plate and he would turn these dials and the sand would vibrate into patterns. And, you know, Ryan, he's like a visionary guy. He's looking at this going, I want to create a technology out of this. And so we start batting around ideas of how it would look, what does the sand do, what are its characteristics, and you know, we had a long talk about what the characteristics of this sand would be and what the technology would be. So they gave me a Letitia Wright recorded some dialogue that sounds a lot like what you hear at the beginning of the movie now.
Okay.
But it wasn't exactly the same. It was written more for her character. And that's what I was telling you, that After Effects animation. I did like full on After Effects animation stuff to this title sequence, and it came out really, really nice. It was like 7 minutes long, and it was a lot of work, and they were really happy with it. And I got the call after that to go on Captain Marvel, and Nate Moore, he called me and said, hey, I just referred you over to the Captain Marvel people, and you know, I told them, you know, they would be really, really, really lucky to have somebody like you. And I was like, oh, dude, you know, thank you so much. That's so nice to hear, you know. So that was, I would probably say that was one of the best moments right there, like as far as work goes, to be able to like take, you know, this one concept and expand. Someday, hopefully, maybe I can share it. It's just there's so many different things going on. They had to cut a lot of it out for time's sake. I think the opening sequence is just like a couple minutes long, but the one that I boarded was like 7 minutes. It was a ton of work, but it was so much fun. And yeah, they really ended up liking it a lot. So that made it really satisfying and one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean that was one of my favorite scenes as well. With the vibranium sand, it felt it was exposition, but it didn't feel like needless exposition. You know, like it felt very engaging
Yeah.
watching it. You know, so
Yeah, the first pass I did on that, there was a lot of exposition. They knew they were going to have to cut it down, but they wanted to get it all in there and have me animate the entire thing, so they can kind of, it's always easier to edit down from when you have a lot versus when you have
right,
nothing.
right.
So, but in the end, when I again going back to that scenario, when I go and sit down and I see the movie for the first time, it's like, oh, it's not Letitia Wright anymore. It's I forget what his
It
name
was
was. He was
Killmonger's
narrating.
dad, right? It was
Yeah. Um,
something Knight, right? I forgot his name, but he was.
yeah, so he ended up doing the narration instead of Letitia, which was a
Hmm.
shock. And then yeah, they changed up a little bit of the sand technology. There's another good friend of mine who's a storyboard artist. He works exclusively in commercials only.
Hmm.
That's how I met him. And he was working at a production company, and apparently the title sequence came to them in some form. And he called me up. He's like, "Hey, did you do this work?" And something went through them where they had to kind of whittle it down and make it a little more financially achievable.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it went through like another process after me. So again, when I'm sitting down watching the final thing, it's some stuff is left in, some stuff isn't, because so many people have touched it since you've done it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I would assume all those little grains of sand is pretty expensive to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I mean, the boards that I did, there were no grains of sand. It was more like clumpy clumps of sand. Whenever I had to move sand around in that animatic, it's like, okay, clump of sand. Yeah, but yeah, it was fun.
Well, that's awesome, man. Got one more question for you.
Sure.
So, do you have any advice for people looking to get into this industry or get into this career?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because like I was saying, it's not just drawing.
Hmm.
It is drawing. I mean, here's the thing. Let's just take the drawing component of it for a second.
Yeah.
You have to be able to draw anything at any angle at any given time, unless specific reference is called for. That's a lot just to get under your belt right there. I mean, just think about what's involved in that. Your mastery of perspective, your mastery of the human form, emotion. That's a big thing to have to try and get a grip on. So you can wield those powers of yours professionally. You understand the human form, you understand perspective, you understand composition, you understand lighting, and this and that. That just covers the drawing part of it. It's a multidisciplinary job. So you have to be a director.
Mhm.
You have to be an actor. You have to be an editor. You have to be a cinematographer. You have to be a stuntman. You have to be a second unit director. You have to be a writer, because you are the first visual iteration of the script. And in order for you to bring the script to life to the point where you have to pitch it to other people, you have to have a basic understanding of all these disciplines. You can't storyboard a scene and not understand how to edit. How are you going to edit your shots together? How are you going to sell this to these people? You can't storyboard a scene and not understand about composition. Oh, gee, this is great, but all these people are in two shots in every single shot. You have to vary the shots. You have to understand. And you can't just throw any old shot in there. Like I was saying about the 8-second unit guy. Sometimes you don't want to put shots in there that they can't get in camera because they can see right through it and it makes you look amateurish. It's like, yeah, it's great, but we can't get that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say like go to film school. I don't know. I don't know if they even really get into storyboarding in film school, because there's a lot of film schools that I've spoken at. They don't even talk about it.
Wow.
They're like ignorant of it. It's like, oh, wow, storyboards. Wow. And they do all this. Wow. They're responsible for this and that. It's like, yeah. I would say that, if you're left up to your own devices, get as many books as you can about the subject. Do your own type of research. Look at commercials, like a 30-second commercial, and pause it every time they cut. Every time the camera cuts to a new angle, pause it and understand why they're making those cuts, why they're making those decisions. Because it's much easier to break down a 30-second spot and understand what they're trying to do with that spot than a 2.5-hour movie. So, there's a level of camera language that you need to know. Cutting and pacing and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. There's great groups on Facebook that you can join, storyboarding groups, a couple that I'm part of. I just posted there the other day. You'll see a lot of big heavy hitters posting there. And if you post stuff there, ask for feedback. Believe me, you'll get no shortage of people wanting to give you your 2 cents or their 2 cents. And coming from people that actually do the job, that are actually working, is the best, because the job has sort of morphed over the years. It's not just traditional board anymore. There's a lot of animation and animatics going on.
Right.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's no one-stop shop for storyboarding.
Gotcha. It's very much a mix of everything. It's very technical, but also artistic and a lot
Yes.
of other elements.
Yeah, I think a good way to cover all those things, you don't have to be like, oh, I'm a cinematography. Okay, I better go watch Roger Deakins movies or editing. It's like the way I kind of covered a lot of that is through animation. I watch how they cover scenes. Animation storyboard artists are the best storytellers in the world. I don't care what anybody does. Live action guys like me, okay, yeah, we can get the point across, but we don't have to deal with we have to deal with the acting as so far as, oh, this guy's mad here, oh, they're scared here, or they're worried here. We don't have to deliver lines of dialogue while a person is crying and then all of a sudden they're happy. Oh, now they're crying again. Animation people have to do that in the storyboards. They have to convey that type of stuff. They're the premier storytellers. So you can really learn a lot from them as far as how to cut, how to direct, how to stage a sequence, the composition. Now, you can't go too far down that road if you want to be in live action because all your stuff's going to look like it's came out SpongeBob SquarePants. But if you look at animation for what it is at its core, it's supreme sequential visual storytelling. And nobody does it better than animation board artists, in my opinion. So don't get so overwhelmed by, oh, I got to learn editing. I got to learn cinematography. I got to learn this. I got to learn that. Sit down and watch a good animation movie and you can see how these animators, because there's no actors involved, there's no lighting involved, there's no crew involved. It's the artist at placing that figure in that frame and posing it a certain way and making it move a certain way and then cutting to the next shot. All of it's right there. And that's how I would just like watch animation sequences and say, there's no reason I can't translate this to film. I'll ground it a little more in reality. Like the cutting works, everything works.
Gotcha.
I'm saying that because I'm not like a big, huge student of film. I'm not like a cinephile. Most of the guys that I work with, forget about knowing the directors. They know production designers on movies. Oh, so-and-so production designed that movie. How the hell do you even know? I don't even know who directed the movie. What are you talking about production design? But these are the types of people that you're working with a lot of the time. But I don't have that background, and I don't need it because I love animation and I love movies too, but I'm just not a cinephile. What attracts me more is the action, the animation, the kinetic energy, and be able to bring that into the sequence. That's where I feel like my powers, if you will, are at their best. So yeah, I get a lot of inspiration from that. It's not that I'm like digging through films and looking and studying and, not saying that you can't do that. I just never had the aptitude for it or the attention span. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you go on my Pinterest page. If people have questions, I'll be more than happy to field questions. I have a lot of people asking me stuff, but I usually get to it. And if you have a question, I'll be more than happy to give you some pointers on how to put together a portfolio or, but again, it's a tough one because there's so much stuff that goes into it.
Yeah.
Somebody helped me along the way and I'm willing to help other people. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for doing this, Tony. I really appreciate it.
I hope it was worth it.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a great episode. Do you have anything you're working on you want people to check out?
No, if you could just go to my Instagram page. It's Big Screen Boards. And I try and post stuff there all the time. I get pretty swamped with work, so I haven't posted in a while. I just posted something the other day, but there may be times where I'm not posting stuff for a while. But usually I'll get my most recent stuff on there. I'll do some breakdowns on how I put together animatics. There's a lot of fun stuff on there.
Cool,
so if you check it out,
yeah, I'll link that in the description and let people check it out.
Yeah, feel free to ask me questions, and I'll get to what I can get to, and yeah, always down to help anybody out or answer any questions.
Awesome. I think that's a good place to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, thanks for doing this, Tony. Like I said, I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, Tony.